Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, recovery and rescue efforts continue in Turkey. We've got developments. Plus, in Ukraine, innocent civilians are at risk of landmines and body traps planted by the Russian military.
It can be village, can be field, can be critical infrastructure, whatever. The most dangerous for now is clusters. If you touch it, you can make blow up.
See how one American beret is helping fight against the danger. Then later,
we're all under too much stress, whether we notice it or not.
Find out the ramifications of chronic stress and ways to fight it. All these stories and more coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
I want to begin this half hour with the more than 70 nations and dozens of relief groups working in Turkey to help recover from 2 major earthquakes and dozens of aftershocks. Chris Mitchell traces the efforts of CBN's Operation Blessing to organize on the ground and to reach out to those devastated by the massive disaster.
Past midnight Saturday morning, Operation Blessing's Diego Traverso briefs volunteers to establish a relief plan.
And we want to thank you guys for being here.
We're here in the city of Adana on our way to the city of Hatay, one of the worst hit cities in the region. We're leaving about 1 o'clock in the morning. We're here at a gas station filling up with gas. The reason we're leaving so early is because what used to take 3 hours, because of the traffic now, takes about 9 hours. After about a 4-hour drive, the convoy reaches the city with a couple of hours to spare before the workday begins. After driving through most of the night, the team arrived here in Hatay, ready to unload about 10 tons of supplies and food.
Today we're going to set it up a soup kitchen, hopefully 2 of them, one in downtown for the rescue teams and some of the people that got affected by the earthquake, and another one here in this neighborhood that is pretty safe. From here, we're going to be distributing hot meals to the most affected areas in this region.
Traverso is a 10-year veteran of disaster relief and earthquakes, from Nepal to Haiti and to Indonesia.
I never thought in 10 years of working in disasters that the magnitude of this disaster, the despair and the suffering is huge. And Operation Blessing, CBN, is here to support the victims.
The volunteer team is multilingual, national, and generational in a united effort to help the people of Turkey.
I always love this name because that's the thing. This is an Operation Blessing, and it's been a blessing to so many people.
In the center of Hatay, a food distribution center is set up right across from some of the hardest hit areas.
Providing their life, we can provide the peace they need.
Here in the city of Hatay, you get a sense of the scope of the disaster. Almost every building in this city has been made uninhabitable or is destroyed, like the ones you see behind me. The earthquake has affected an area the size of Great Britain and touched the lives of 14 million people. Traverso says prayer and support will help OB do more.
Pray for sure. And if you can donate in some way, please do it. People need it, and it's going to extend our footprint here. We're going to be able to do way more of what we're already doing it. $1 goes really far here, and that's amazing too.
It's now on the ground. Chris, let's begin setting the scene for us, especially what are you seeing when it comes to families searching for loved ones?
Well, the families are waiting sometimes for loved ones, Efrem. You know, we saw that in the city of Hatay. Actually, it's the province of Hatay, city of Antioch, where Paul established his church. We're in Iskenderun right now. Just Mario Pan, just a little bit here. Just a scope of this destruction. You can see this actually when we came back from Antioch, when we were staying in Adana. This goes on for miles and miles and miles. I said in the stand-up it was about the size of Great Britain. For the U.S., another analogy is it goes all the way from New York City to Washington, D.C., from the coast of New Jersey well into Pennsylvania. It's just a massive disaster. Here in Iskenderun, you can look almost in every direction, and you can find rubble. You can find people that are walking around, you know, trying to get soup, the soup across the street. Just a massive disaster, Efrem. I've never seen anything like it, and I think the people in this country haven't either.
Yeah, I tell you, massive indeed. What's the timeline now on search and rescue teams and what happens next?
Well, the search and rescue teams are just about at the end of their time. The reason for that, it's been a week today that the earthquake hit, and people can't survive that long without food, especially water, and survival hypothermia. The cold, especially at night, is very severe, and people just can't survive. Some of the search and rescue teams have already left the region. The Israeli team did. United Hatzalah, another Israeli team, they've gone too. But so that's really the timeline. Now it's recovery of the many people that have died, unfortunately. I think it's over 30,000 now. Could go much, much higher.
I know Operation Blessing is on the ground as well, offering disaster relief. In what ways can people continue to help?
Well, as Diego said in our story, pray. Keep praying for the people of Turkey. They need it. This is such a desperate situation for millions and millions of people. Consider sometimes the ones that survived, they might have left a building, but the buildings collapsed. They've lost sort of all the connection to their identity, to their bank statements, their documents. It's just a desperate situation. But they can also give to Operation Blessing. They're on the ground. They're established. They plan to be here for a while, and they can really help people by contributing there, but also praying for the people, being informed of what's happening so people can pray specifically. But the people of Turkey need help right now in such a desperate way. A disaster of this magnitude is going to impact this country for decades to come.
Indeed it is. Let us not forget them. Chris Mitchell reporting for us there on the ground. Thank you so much, Chris. Want to remind you at home, if you'd like to help Operation Blessing's disaster relief efforts in this terrible tragedy, you can do so by calling 1-800-700-7000, or you can simply go to cbn.com. You can text as well, OBDR to 7177, or you can send your donations via mail to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23463. As you can imagine, anything you're able to do is greatly needed and appreciated. Another deadly terror attack in Jerusalem is raising calls for more security in East Jerusalem, similar to a counterterrorism operation carried out in the West Bank 20 years ago. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl is on this story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pointed to the difference between Israel and its enemies in the weekly cabinet meeting.
Our enemies murder young children in Jerusalem and celebrate their murder while we're rescuing young children in Turkey and praising their rescue.
On Friday, a Jerusalem resident rammed his car into a bus stop, killing two brothers aged 6 and 8, a 20-year-old man, and wounding 5 others.
This terrorist rammed his vehicle into the bus stop at a high speed. I want to emphasize that the attack was on civilians, and the police will not stand for this type of terror on our civilians.
An off-duty policeman shot and killed the terrorist, a 31-year-old Jerusalem resident.
There isn't anything more difficult to arrive to an incident in which a child was murdered. We are praying also for others. A 20-year-old was also killed. There are no words more difficult than that.
This is the latest in a number of attacks in and around Jerusalem carried out by Jerusalem residents. Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has sparked controversy by calling for police raids and other measures against Palestinian residents of eastern Jerusalem.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for adopting my policy. First, to seal the house as soon as possible, and second, instructing the police to set up checkpoints around Israel and to stop and check every vehicle one by one. I wanted to set a full blockade, but there is a judicial question here around it, and we will discuss it.
Tensions remain high following the January 27th attack outside a synagogue that killed 7. Most East Jerusalem Arab residents hold a special status that includes every privilege of an Israeli citizen except the right to vote in national elections. Following Friday's attack, police arrested relatives and the landlord of the terrorist for questioning. Meanwhile, overnight Saturday, Israel said it intercepted a rocket launched from the Gaza Strip at Israel, and Monday, the Israel Defense Forces said it bombed a Hamas underground rocket manufacturing site and other sites in response. Netanyahu predicts the Knesset will pass a proposal this week to revoke the citizenship of terrorists and expel them.
The appropriate response to terror is to pound it with force and further deepen our roots in our land. Therefore, the cabinet will convene today to prepare for an even broader operation against the perpetrators of terrorism and their supporters in East Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, while avoiding as much as possible harming those uninvolved.
In light of ongoing protests against the government government and its reforms, Netanyahu called on the opposition to act responsibly and dialogue without crossing red lines. Later, in response to the Jerusalem terror attacks, the Security Cabinet authorized 9 existing settlements in Judea and Samaria, giving them full rights as Israeli communities. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Back here in the U.S., we're following the military shooting down yet another object, this one over Lake Huron in Michigan Sunday. It is the 4th flying object to be shot down over North American airspace in just 8 days. The Pentagon says they are still trying to determine exactly what the objects are and what they're doing. Wendy Griffith has our report.
Officials say the octagon-shaped structure was unmanned and floating above sensitive sites at only about 20,000 feet. The Pentagon says they aren't ruling anything out, not even UFOs.
We continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with an attempt to identify it.
Fighter jets also shot down objects over Alaska and Canada over the weekend.
It represented a reasonable threat to civilian aircraft. Canadian and American fighter jets were scrambled, and an American F-22 successfully shot down the object.
The pilots who took out the flying object over Alaska Friday described it as a type of small airship that interfered with their sensors before they shot it down. While the Pentagon says these objects do not appear to be related to the giant Chinese spy balloon that was shot down off the coast of South Carolina on February 4th, officials are still trying to determine if China is responsible.
So China's a problem, and this administration thus far hasn't set a very good example of standing up to China. I think that, shooting the balloon down in the Atlantic once it flew over all the military bases, including my own Fort Campbell, Kentucky, it's very disturbing. I'm glad this administration's taken it more seriously with respect to the balloons.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer defended the administration's response to the first balloon, telling ABC's This Week that U.S. officials have gathered significant intelligence from it after it was shot down over the Atlantic near Myrtle Beach.
By shooting it down over water, U.S. waters, only 6 miles out from South Carolina, we're going to probably be able to piece together this whole surveillance balloon and know exactly what's going on.
For now, there are more questions than answers about what these mysterious flying objects are, what their purpose is, and who's behind it. But U.S. officials say they'll stay on heightened alert until they know more. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Coming up, 2 million acres of land and who knows how many landmines planted beneath the surface. Russian soldiers have buried deadly traps across Ukraine. Now meet the people who are risking their lives to disarm them. That's coming up next right here on CBN NewsWatch. Stay with us. Landmines and booby traps. The Russian military has planted thousands of them in Ukraine. Now, even in the areas the Russians have fled, innocent civilians are at risk of these lethal weapons. As Chuck Holton reports, one American Green Beret has dedicated himself to helping to clear the areas of this danger.
Thousands of villages across eastern Ukraine now look like this. Most residents have either fled or died in the fighting. Once areas are liberated from Russian occupation, people start to come back. The downside is what Russian military left behind. Landmines, booby traps, and IEDs litter the landscape, meaning no one is safe until every square foot of land has been cleared.
It can be village, can be field, can be critical infrastructure, whatever. The most dangerous for now it's clusters. If you touch it, you can make blow up. The yards, roads, fields, everywhere. Hundreds, I think maybe thousands. But we haven't choice. All of my guys need to be on the dangerous area.
The challenge is that there's no battlefield that is exclusively soldiers forever. The U.S. has gone away from scatterable munitions, scatterable anti-personnel and anti-armor munitions that do not self-detonate over a period of time.
And it can remain dangerous for decades.
This is yet another kind of Russian terror that will have to be dealt with for years to come. It's even more cruel and meaner than firing a missile because there is no anti-mine system that could destroy at least part of the threat as our air defense does.
Many people know the joy of taking a walk in the woods, and here in Ukraine, that's a common pastime. But now with almost 2 million acres of land contaminated by landmines, it's going to be generations before people will be able to do that again. And that means that what was once an enjoyable pastime now could be a matter of life and death.
Even when it's not in an active combat zone, the mines can be unstable, and you don't know how long they've been there. By the time you get on top of that thing, you can do everything right, and it can still detonate. But these are things that, they'll kill children down the road. Some of these mines you're seeing in Ukraine will kill children that won't be found. They have for decades all around the world.
Ryan Hendrickson is very familiar with landmines and IEDs from his career as a U.S. Green Beret.
I stepped on a landmine in 2010, nearly took my life. I did 7 more trips back to Afghanistan as a Green Beret.
Upon leaving the military, he wondered what God's plan was for his life going forward.
Everybody, especially veterans, you battle with your purpose. What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? What mark am I going to leave when I'm gone? Will I be remembered? A lot of people ask that question. And I was searching for that purpose after Afghanistan closed the way it did. And I found it, in February when Russia escalated the war over here in Ukraine.
Hendrickson then headed to Ukraine, not exactly sure what help he could offer.
Americans, we don't have to live in fear of our next step, but a lot of the world does. And Ukraine is when this conflict is over, Ukraine is going to end up being the most landmine country in the world.
It's crazy, the amount of civilian destruction here. Just one of the places that we're looking into.
Now, Ryan works on the front lines, taking on the dangerous work of disarming dozens, even hundreds of landmines in a day.
I've been asked a few times about how I kind of track them down a little bit. So there was one, already pulled that. And then you got 2, 3, and 4. And then it starts going uphill.
I feel, first of all, it's respect of guys like him. It's a very difficult job going to another country in war. He can't be with his wife, with his family. It's very important, and I appreciate it.
For this old soldier, it's not about the praise. It's having the faith and hope that something positive can come out of his own tragedy.
So because I believe that when I'm born, and when I die, that's out of my hands. So everything in the middle, life is extremely short. So why not help people while you're here?
In southern Ukraine, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Still ahead, bringing peace and joy to your life to alleviate chronic stress. The story's next. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. COVID-19 caused a dramatic spike in anxiety in millions of people. Yet even before the pandemic, Americans had reported increased stress levels for the last 20 years. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson shows us the health ramifications of chronic stress and what we can do to bring a sense of peace back into our lives.
Whether we're worried about the cost of living, anxious over daily disappointments, or overwhelmed by negative thoughts, stress can prove toxic to the body.
We're all under too much stress, whether we notice it or not.
Psychologist Alyssa Eppel researches how chronic stress can damage the body and says it goes all the way down to the cellular level.
Scientists say stress triggers a chain reaction in the body that can end up shortening the telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of our chromosomes. Short telomeres often predict earlier onset of disease and death. The good news is we can turn things around before they reach that state.
In her book, The Stress Prescription, Dr. Eppel lists 7 ways to reduce stress, beginning with embracing uncertainty.
How much can you relax if you don't know what will happen tomorrow, or if you don't know how plans will go later? Because it turns out when we're intolerant of uncertainty, we're much more vulnerable to anxiety and depression when stressful things happen.
Another recommendation, let go of what you can't control, referencing the traditional serenity prayer.
That prayer has so much wisdom, and that's why it sticks around.
Then find excitement in challenges instead of fearing them.
Emphasizing your resources and what you can do, and how that can overcome the demand.
You can metabolize body stress through exercise, hot saunas, and cold showers. Also, immerse yourself in nature to help reduce blood pressure and anxiety, and create a sanctuary like a prayer closet to get away from the world.
All sorts of mind-body practices, and I believe, prayer can do this too. We can develop spiritual urgency, not wait till we get sick and then we feel spiritual urgency, but actually realize now the miracle of life, the fragility of life.
Experience deep rest through proper sleep and breathing techniques. And finally, create bliss bookends. That means starting and ending each day with gratitude, while also making strong connections in between.
That is one of the ways that we cope with the big stressors especially well, is really through relationships, supportive relationships.
Even people we don't know.
So kind acts to strangers in one study had beautiful effects on gene expression for inflammation.
So while we can't ignore the problems in our lives, we can respond to them differently and hopefully feel a greater sense of peace and joy. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Stay with us. Your Monday Motivation is coming up right after this. Time now for your Monday Motivation, and today I leave you with this thought as we begin another week. Don't despise your present position. Put your hand to the plow and do your best work. This is practice for the greater that's coming, and practice doesn't only make perfect. Practice makes purpose. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow. Make it a marvelous Monday, everybody.